Okay, let's continue from where we start. So we've already done evolution, the evidence of evolution, which I explained properly. I want us to look at theories of evolution. Okay, theories of evolution. Now I'm looking at theories of evolution. Now, theories of evolution, of course, are you with me? Number one theory is, the ancient theories. Then number two is modern, evolutionary theory. So at this level, we are going to be looking at the two major ancient theories, which are number one, we have the the Jean Lamarck's theory of evolution, and on the other hand, we have Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. So, like I said, we have Jean Lamarck's theory and we have Charles Darwin theory. So these two theories are, the major theories we are using today when it comes to evolution. Now, what did Jean Lamarck talk about? Jean Lamarck, majorly spoke about two theories in one, as case may be three. Are you with me? Number one theory is the theory of need. Theory of need. Then number two is theory of use and disuse. Are you with me? Then the third one is theory of are you with me? Theory of acquired inheritance. Okay? Inheritance. Are you there? Theory of acquired inheritance. Now here, Jean Lamarck is trying to tell us that any part of the body that is in use, okay, that is in use more often, will continue developing. Why those ones that are not in use often, why those ones which are being disused, which are not in use, okay, will degenerate or will become wasted. Am I communicating? They stop working. Am I communicating? Going to a hospital today, we have what we call wasted muscles. Are you with me? Wasted muscles. So these guys, these patients have their muscles there, but the muscles are not active. The filaments are not working because they've stopped using it. Now, let me give you an instance. Have you seen a lame person? Okay, you see a lame person who uses their will. Okay, you'll find out that more especially all these lame people from a tribe. Okay, you find out that whenever they sit on their will, okay, they use their hand to move, isn't it? They use their hand to move. As time goes on, initially when they became lame, am I communicating? Their legs were not tiny, okay, but as time goes on, okay, initially when they became lame, before they became lame, their legs were not tiny. They had their gastrocnemius muscle they have their, sartorius muscle, which is the tailor muscle. Am I communicating? Then the accusative muscle, which is the one we see here. Okay. Now, then these are the three theories. Like I said, the lame person, the initial time when he became lame, okay, the legs were not as tiny as time goes on. Okay, but when you notice, if you observe, you notice that their hands, at some point begins to grow bigger because they are using more of their hands to move. All right, so they for them to propel, as case may be, for them to move forward or backward, they use their hand to propel, okay, to and fro. Am I communicating? So here, as time goes on, the muscles, will be undergoing some growth, okay, thereby becoming much more developed. Are you getting me? Then that of their legs will become thin, okay, we machiate, to a certain size, of course, smaller size in this case. Are you with me? So, for Jean Lamarck, he first of all stated the theory of need, where in a habitat, okay, an organism actually might have a need to use um, a particular structure or particular part of the body more than the other. Am I communicating? Okay. Yeah. So when there is a need to use a particular body structure or part of the body than the other, okay, you find out that as time goes on, as the organism continue to using that part of the body, that part of the body continue to grow what? Bigger, as case may be, maybe taller, okay, in order to suit for what the organism needs it for. So there is a theory of what? Of need here. So you use giraffe to give an instance. He said that initially the giraffe were not naturally you know created, as case may be, were naturally formed by with short necks. Okay, but due to the fact that they need to, during competition, they try to eat foods over, at a certain height. Okay, as they want to eat food, okay, this is the tree, for instance, and the giraffe want to eat, from here. Okay, the giraffe tends to, stretch its neck. Am I communicating? To stretch its neck to get this food over here. Are you with me? So as time goes on, okay, the neck begins to grow taller. That's what happens. Am I communicating? So here, we found out that the part of the body that were in use much more, okay, is being developed, for better efficiency, as case may be. All right. Then the one that is not in use, okay, will deteriorate or will be reducing in structure and in function. Are you with me? Then, after which he now said that, okay, that these acquired, inheritance, I get to my point. This is acquired because it was not like this. The neck of giraffe was not like this as he proposed, okay? That the neck wasn't like this before now. But as time goes on, we found out that the new offspring will be having long necks. I don't know if you're getting my point. So here, he's trying to say that, these acquired traits, okay, these acquired traits will be inherited or has the ability to be inherited. Am I communicating? But these acquired traits are not genetically, were not genetically formed. So automatically, it cannot happen. So this is the only limitation of the Jean Lamarck's theory. Okay, the limitation is that he said, these two were not abolished, but the theory of acquired inheritance were abolished because, these acquired traits, these physical traits, these traits are physical, and I would mean these physical traits were not genetically formed. Am I communicating? So they cannot be inherited, and that is the only problem Jean Lamarck had in his theory. Am I communicating? Then when you go to Charles Darwin theory. This theory is otherwise known as theory of natural selection. Are you with me? Theory of natural selection. Theory of natural selection. Now, when you look at theory of natural selection or Charles Darwin's theory, is a theory um, that entails that organisms are formed, okay? The organisms have evolved, through natural selection, okay? Now, what do I mean by that? Charles Darwin proposed that organisms evolve through natural selection because, imagine, take for instance, he said, imagine having in in a habitat, plant habitat, where we have the grasses, we have the grasses and we have the trees. Are you with me? Then the grasses are down here, then the trees are up here. Okay. Now the trees may have what is it called, leaves that is being transformed to in form of canopy. Are you with me? Now you found out that if as time goes on, the environment will not be favorable for these grasses for them to stay in this habitat. Why is it like that? The grasses and the trees are all autotrophs, so they produce their own food using the pigments, of course, the yellow pigment and the green pigment, the chlorophyll, the xanthophyll, and all that. They uses it to produce their own food, manufacture their own food. Are you with me? So here, at some point, you find out that the amount of light rays that will be entering, okay, from the sun, from the UV rays, okay, might not be able to be getting to the grasses, or it will be insufficient for the grasses to produce their own food. During photosynthesis, energy is needed. Okay, the first phase of photosynthesis is the light phase. Am I communicating? As case may be, energy is needed here. So here we need to use energy from the sunlight to break some molecules. Am I communicating? So as time goes on, we found out that the nature will select the kind of plants or organisms that will be able to stay in this environment, in this habitat. So we found out that these xerophytes, okay, which are plants plant that lives on the terrestrial habitat, we found out that the grasses will go off. All right, the grasses will go off because they cannot be able to manufacture their own food because of lack of sunlight or inadequate sunlight reaching them. Okay, because why is it like that? If rays of light is coming to this environment, you find out that the canopy formed by these trees, okay, say all these bigger trees, okay, we found out that the rays of light will not be able to penetrate the down parts or the ground part of the habitat, thereby making all the grasses there to be insufficient with food, and at some point they begin to die off. So this is a typical example of natural selection. Here, at some point, you found out that some species of organisms living in this population, as case may be, has died off. Okay, so at that point, we will have the species, okay, that will be able to support, that will be able to stay on these for these conditions of the environment, okay, and this where how the trees will now be able to stay there with time. Then the other plants, as case may be, if for animals, okay, will go for extinction. Are you getting my point? Yeah, they will go for extinction if they could not leave the environment to a better one where the situation or where the physical conditions are favorable for them. Am I communicating? So that is for Charles Darwin's theory. That's for Charles Darwin's theory. Okay, so let's look at modern evolutionary theory. Now, the modern evolutionary theory is otherwise known as neo-Darwinism. Okay, neo-Darwinism theory or neo-Darwin theory. So, you say neo-Darwinism theory. Why is it like that? Okay, now, modern evolutionary theory is actually a modified Charles Darwin's theory. Am I communicating? Modified Charles Darwin theory. So when you say new, that is N-E-O. Sorry. When you say new, new means new. So new Darwin's theory, okay? That is what we call what? New Darwinism, which is a modern evolutionary theory. So there are some scientists which who, other modern scientists came together, and started studying on evolution and theory of natural selection, which actually were supported by many other scientists, okay? Now, they came up with a theory known as what? Neo-Darwinism, okay? Now, this is a theory that supports natural selection, okay, as to genetics. Am I communicating? Now, in Neo-Darwinism, our key points there are natural selection. In Neo-Darwinism, our key points are natural selection, another key point is gene mutation. Another key point is a gene flow. Then the last one is gene drifts. Are you with me? So all these things are, we actually put together by many scientists, like Eva Lavando, somebody like David Stout, somebody like Lallands, John Lallands, then someone like Muller, okay, someone like Stout. They came together to, someone like Eva, okay, they came together, that is Eva Lalando. They came together, and many other scientists, okay, they came together to, to study natural selection, and they added, genetics into it, and this were now be given as, these were now termed as modern evolutionary theory. Okay, so what happens here? The natural selection is already there. We know what happens there, all right? So the nature selects, the species of plants or animals or organisms actually that can be able to, stay in that habitat, okay? Considering the condition in the habitat. Are you with me? So now, what happens? You find out that as far as these organisms are there competing, you'll be noticing that gene mutation can begin to occur. The ones that are not fit, okay, the unfit will actually dies off because their gene will be mutated because of the fact that they will not be able to stay in that habitat. Then the fittest will do what? Will be able to stay there. All right. Then sometimes we find out that that some of the unfit, okay, some of them will begin to move into another habitat, okay. Now, if they move into another habitat, are you getting my point? Then they will have other species of animals or plants, as case maybe organisms in that habitat. So once they move into that habitat, if they can be able to stay there, okay. Now, in fact, the movement of those unfit to another habitat in order to find survival, okay, is known as the gene flow. Am I communicating? Then when talking about gene drift, okay, gene drift is actually, also what we see during natural selection, okay, where a habitat, at some point is being changed into another habitat. Am I communicating? Due to competition. Are you with me? So you have these plants here. At some point, they vanishes due to unfavorable condition, due to competition, due to the fact that they couldn't stay in that unfavorable condition, or the habitats were not favorable to them. So they drift. So that what we call what? Gene drift. Am I communicating? So at this point in time, I think we're able to, touch theories of evolution. Are you with me? So when you sit down, you listen again on these theories which already been given. So let me do some recap. Okay. So when you have theories of evolution, we are looking at the ancient and the modern. The ancient is actually, majorly the Jean Lamarck's theory and Charles Darwin's theory, all right? Then for modern evolutionary theory is actually a modified Charles Darwin's theory, all right? Then there are some scientists who also worked on, on relating and, bringing an interaction between genetics and the natural selection. Are with me? And they were the one that actually formed the new Darwinism or the new modern theory. Are with me? At this point in time, we are going to be calling it, a break. Okay? Watch out for the next video.